everyone, this is Peak Entertainment and we're back again, and here now we have another video for you, and we're going to take a look back at Tomorrow Never Dies and see as to whether it's one of the coolest and most underrated James Bond adventures within the long running franchise. The movie itself, released back in 9th of December 1997, was Pierce Brosnan in his second outing as the iconic super spy, starring alongside Michelle Yeoh, Jonathan Pryce, Terry Hatcher and Judi Dench, and the film was directed by Roger Spottiswoode. The story itself centres around media mogul corporate owner Elliot Carver, who uses various road connections with terrorist groups to create major international incidents, and then uses those incidents to break out the headline news first for his corporation. We see early on this involves using an encoder to provoke a major war between China and the United Kingdom. After various British Marine staff are killed for his latest headline news, Bond is assigned to investigate and stop his ambitions before real war breaks out between China and the UK. Now, with this being his 18th installment within the Bond franchise, Tomorrow Never Dies is one of those really underappreciated and yet superior entries, certainly within the Brosnan era of Bond movies at the very least. Having reinvigorated the franchise back in 1995 with GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies may have less of the classic Bond elements in terms of the exotic locations, the more classical musical score, the standard world-destroying device and the glamorous women. But in many ways it succeeds a lot of Bond movies and is much more streamlined and focused and far less bloated. After a somewhat messy sequence which involves Carver's forces taking down the HMS Devonshire and killing the British troops, Tomorrow Never Dies does well to establish the villain very early on, in terms of what his goal is, his overall nature, and it doesn't deviate too much from the main plot, and this gives it a certain no-nonsense setting, especially with its pacing, where we primarily have two main locations, first in Hamburg, where Bond encounters Carver for the first time, and then later on in Vietnam, where we focus on Bond working together with Chinese field agent Hua Lin. Now, where Tomorrow Never Dies really excels is its cinematography. This is definitely one of the most cleanest looking Bond movies, much more of a modern action thriller aesthetic about it, and that really makes it a lot more contemporary, even more so than GoldenEye, which was somewhat dated in terms of its Cold War overtones. There's a real poise here and sophistication in terms of the look and the direction this time round. And this leads us to the biggest attribute of the film, which is the action sequences. Tomorrow Never Dies features some of the best action scenes in all of the Bond franchise. It really feels inventive, lean, efficient and very exciting. Whether we talk of the opening scene where Bond averts nuclear torpedoes in a jet from getting hit within a terrorist base, we have an extremely funny and inventive escaping of Carver's forces from his hotel, where we see Bond driving his BMW via remote control throughout the car park while evading all of the various forces and coming under attack. And it's one of those truly great entertaining and escapist Bond sequences that brings joy every time you watch it. We then have the terrific extended sequence of Bond and Mai Lin escaping Carver's men, first by abseiling down the huge CMCN tower, and then evading an assault helicopter by driving a motorbike within the Vietnam streets. It's an absolutely massive and spectacular sequence full of energy, very crisply shot, mostly practical stunt work all the way, outlandish without getting silly, and it probably is the true standout sequence of the entire film. Now, when we talk about having the look, Pierce Brosnan continues to maintain a suave coolness that James Bond absolutely should have, bringing that smooth confidence and swagger that still makes his version far superior to Daniel Craig's. He looks like what James Bond should look like, and having that presence and aesthetic will always keep you watching, regardless of the varying quality of his movies. We then mention the great Michelle Yeoh as Hua Lin, energetic, smart, resourceful, physically active, especially in another standout scene where we see her exhibit all of her martial arts skills in a warehouse, taking on various criminals single-handedly. She's naturally beautiful but never overly glamorous, and this is really the ideal strong female character done right, not the overly competent girl boss that seems to plague so many movies throughout today. She and Brosnan have chemistry, but the movie smartly avoids a romantic connection for the most part, only at the customary scene at the end. And I think this was a smart move, as any substantial love story would have stunted the film's momentum and pacing. And overall, she's a fantastic character. And yes, we do have to mention the other Bond girl in Terry Hatcher, much more the typical glamorous blonde women that we associate the franchise with so much. And this is when she was at the height of her profile and career, following her long-running role as Lois Lane in The Adventures of Lois and Clark for many years. Very beautiful all the same. Not as much depth in terms of a character, but that's the role that she plays. Overall, very easy on the eye. And then we talk about Jonathan Pryce as Carver, and yes, he does ham it up a bit too much at times, and he's not exactly a threatening, imposing presence, but at least he is a presence, a personality. He's very snarky and petty, but overall we do have a full-blooded character, and he does get quite a lot of screen time, which a lot of main other Bond villains don't have throughout the various films. By far, he's much more of a memorable antagonist than what we saw within the 3 other of Brosnan's films. And at the very least, he went for something slightly different in terms of a media mogul trying to control and manipulate the perceptions of media, which again bears much more relevance in today's culture. So we then talk about the movie's box office release, and despite opening at number 2 within the US cinemas behind James Cameron's Titanic, Tomorrow Never Dies went on to gross over $333 million from a budget of around $120 million. Continuing the blockbuster success that was provided by GoldenEye back in 1995. And regardless of what you think about Brosnan's tenure as Bond, you can't deny what his interpretation did in terms of making the character much more prolific and relevant amongst modern day audiences at the time, making Bond a big franchise once again, and he certainly helped Daniel Craig's era in making Bond every bit as big as the Marvel, Star Wars or Harry Potter movies. And for me, Tomorrow Never Dies remains Brosnan's best movie effort as Bond. Again, it doesn't have the more classic Bond elements, and it didn't have the same legacy impact as what GoldenEye did, but it's much more leaner, sophisticated, far more focused and cooler overall in terms of a Bond adventure that doesn't age quite as badly as what GoldenEye does, and it definitely deserves far more consideration in terms of the ranking of the Bond films overall. So there's my other thoughts and feelings when looking back at Tomorrow Never Dies. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you have any other movies, television series, or any other topics within the pop entertainment and culture scene that you'd like to see me cover within the channel, also drop me a suggestion within the comments and I will see if I can provide further commentary for you on that subject matter within the future. Please also hit like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.